When submitting her theory that something different motivated her daughter, my mother revels in telling a certain story about preschool pickup. Her sunny pride basks behind the curtain of words, peeking through in holes from hungry exceptionalist wear and tear. She tells of watching a gaggle of 4-year-olds push and shove past each other to gather coats and hats and crinkled finger paint masterworks. Then she tells of the crowd thinning, and of her daughter, who had waited with folded hands, rising slowly from her desk to collect her things, uninhibited by the congestion. She packs her bag and makes her way back to her seat, seeming to ignore the peculiarity of doing it alone. Throughout my life, I had come to several vastly different conclusions about my own psyche, depending on what particular age of self-criticism I was testing out. Listening to my mother tell this story, I had oscillated between different genres of embarrassment, pride, arrogance, and self-pity. It was not until struggling to revamp my motivation post-undergrad that I realized where this peculiar preschool behavior may have stemmed from. It was a bit disconcerting to realize that my personal experience with education had much less to do with a commitment to learning and far more to do with an obsession with impressing authority figures. Even more disconcerting was that it may have stemmed from a place that I cannot look back on with any accuracy, and that I cannot begin to know why it had such a particular hold on me. All I have is this idea that somewhere in some key developmental stage, my subconscious determined that vying to stand out ranked above anything else in my priorities. On some fundamental level, I literally could not conceptualize why anyone would act out. I can count very few instances in which I defied authority, and in nearly all of those instances, I was not punished. This was not because I wasn't caught, but because the guilt would ultimately result in my self-reporting. I could list hundreds of reasons why this was an advantageous attitude to have at the time. I was, in a quite literal sense, the model student for the American education system. But the shortcomings of that system have manifested in my person in an almost cartoonishly symbolic fashion. My attendance and hard work were motivated almost entirely by grades. My commitment to eloquence in writing was not out of a desire to be more understood in my specificity, but to be seen as impressive. My participation in extracurriculars was key to being seen as well-rounded by college admissions committees. My climbing the ladder to leadership positions was to have the title, not to elicit change. And I didn't really know any of this. It was simply the pattern by which I reaped the most immediate rewards. And even worse, I just kind of assumed that this was how everyone who was successful operated. I thought I'd hacked the system, thinking that, no, I don't actually have to be interested in any of this or really absorb it. I just have to appear as if I'm succeeding in doing so. And sure, did I pick up habits of critical thinkers along the way? Yes, but I saw learning as a means to an end, and that end was approval. I didn't know that learning itself could just be an end. But there was an interest of mine that consistently poked and prodded at my staunch habits, because it was one that I believe preceded my perfectionist reward system. Before I could walk, I was drawing, and before I was anything at all, I was an artist. And it's that, I think, that saved me from forever falling victim to my own perfectionism. This comfort in abstraction, nuance, and a certain type of anarchy was a door that my psyche built early on. I didn't decide to step through it until I began to see the end of a life that rewarded the good grade. As I approached adulthood, I realized that the pedestal I put authority figures on simply based on age and position was folly. While I had led an adolescence hearing and theoretically understanding phrases like respect is earned, not given, I did not understand the value of it until I was presented with the very label I had once so emphatically pursued. I was an adult with a degree, and yet I still felt that I knew absolutely nothing. Or rather, there was still so much more for me to learn. I was hanging onto the doorframe of this vast new perspective when suddenly I found myself thrust forward and swimming in it. And what had kicked me through was treatment for an ADHD diagnosis that I would have never assumed applied to me. That perfectionism had been my lifeline. If I had not had this cut and dry method for motivation as a child, I would not have been able to make it through school at all. I feel like I'm coming to realizations about very basic things super late. But I think that my lens can ultimately provide something a bit unique or interesting. I've been a fish swimming through all of this water and wondering when I would find the ocean, but now I am seeing the ocean everywhere and so suddenly. I have the privilege of being able to learn about the contents of the ocean down to the molecular level. I don't know what this reinterpretation of learning is going to gain me, but now it is a gift to be reintroduced to concepts that once seemed so simple because getting an A was the finish line, that I now understand in a much more practical sense are the building blocks to grasping complexity. I wish my education had emphasized this, but part of me wonders if it did and I just didn't have the tools to notice. Now when I teach in a classroom, I wonder if I had a teacher begging me to grasp that this wasn't it, that the A wasn't the be-all, end-all, that their approval wasn't a sign that I'd succeeded, but rather encouragement to continue pushing beyond what I thought I was capable of. I want to know if there are kids that understand this. I wonder if most don't, but most can. I wonder if maybe it's not healthy to force children to try and see the big picture. I wonder how all of this is changing with the advent of the internet. I wonder if this is something that other people can connect with. I wonder if this was a problem I should have solved earlier or if my change in perspective came at the right time. I wonder if this is just what maturing is. I wonder if I need to slow down. I wonder if I need to lean in. I wonder if there is a right answer. I wonder if there's an answer at all. I wonder if any of this is a problem or just part of the process. I wonder if we limit what we're capable of because of what we're told, and I wonder if this is exactly the way we discover what we're capable of. I have no idea, and so I will try to learn, but without the goal of approval, and even without the goal of answering any of these questions, because learning can be enough, and with it, maybe the answers will just come naturally.